Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crime Time with Connie. I am obviously Connie. If you are new here, I sit down every week, every month, to discuss a true crime case. I discovered today's case by watching a documentary on Tubi called DEAR Zachary. There's a lot of chit-chatter online about it, and this came out a while ago, around 20 years ago. And thankfully, no one gave any spoilers. I wouldn't call it a plot twist because these are people's lives, and it's definitely truly tragic. So if you haven't seen DEAR Zachary, it is directed, made from Andrew Bagby's best friend, Kurt. He made this film for Andrew's son to see when he gets older. Andrew was murdered, and Kurt made this that way his little boy, when he grows up, he can watch this film to understand who his dad was and what his dad was like and all of his friends and family. And it starts out really beautifully, but of course, Andrew was murdered, and so they discuss his case. Yeah, the last 15 minutes, I literally sat up. I cried for the last, 15 minutes, and I sat there crying until even after. I highly recommend you guys go watch that documentary after you're done watching this, or later tonight, whenever you can watch it. I also read the book by Andrew's father, David, who discuss everything that happened, who murdered Andrew and the aftermath, and about Andrew's son, Zachary. So with that, we are going to dive into today's case. I do want to give a trigger warning. This case involves infants, babies. It's very upsetting. In 2001, Dr. Andrew Bagby is found shot to death in a park in Pennsylvania. His killer was his older ex-girlfriend who fled to Canada. Andrew's parents would have to fight 2 legal battles after their son's death, one for extraction and the other for custody. This case does not have a happy ending. It will definitely leave you pissed off. It seems like to me and a lot of people that professionals who are supposed to do their job end up pampering a murderer who unfortunately, sadly, murders again. Like I said, I watched the documentary about this case. Kurt, the filmmaker, Andrew's best friend, he said he had over 300 hours of footage to use. This documentary is an hour and 50 minutes long. So that's a lot of footage to have. And in the documentary, he puts movies that he made with Andrew when they were kids, they were growing up. Andrew seemed to be the star of their little home movies that they would make. Andrew's parents would even tag along in these movies. It was so special to see. You get to see a lot of Andrew's personality bloom through this. Kurt would go on to say, "I wish I never had the opportunity to make this film. I wish my friend was alive and that I was blissfully ignorant of the lessons I've learned along this journey." So with that, we are going to discuss who Andrew was. And I want to preface this. His name is Andrew. He did not go by Andy, just Andrew. Now, Andrew David Bagby was born on September 25th, 1973 to parents David and Kate. David was a computer engineer who was also ex-military. Kate was English-born, who was a OBGYN nurse practitioner. David and Kate met in October of 1967 on a blind date in Disneyland. She wasn't really looking for marriage. She wanted to travel and work. At the time, she was a nurse, but when she met David, they instantly hit it off. And David and Kate seem like a hoot. They are just so funny, and you can just tell that they are really genuinely the kindest people. And Andrew's father, David, there's no one I can relate more in this world than with David. And I will discuss that later, because he will fight for his son. And if you're a parent, you definitely understand that. So at their blind date in Disneyland, they hit it off. They both weren't really looking, but they fell in love. 4 months later, they were married. They did have trouble getting pregnant, but finally in 1973, they were pregnant with Andrew. In David's book that he wrote later on, he talked about when Kate was pregnant, he would put his ear up against her belly and, I'm gonna get emotional. He talked about how he could feel Andrew's little feet kick and the fluttering. He said at times he swore he could hear the heartbeat. Yeah, that was very special to read. Now, getting Andrew into the world was a little bit difficult. He was late, 2 weeks late. And if you've ever been pregnant, that, I'm gonna be blunt, sucks. I've been pregnant 4 times. Babies will come when they are ready. But 2 weeks late, I would be like, get this baby out of me. Eventually, Andrew came into this world after Kate went through a C-section, which is rough. But David and Kate were the happiest people on earth. They finally got to have their little baby. And Andrew would be their only child. David said that Andrew was not a perfect child. I mean, no child really is perfect. He said Andrew had to learn how to, regulate his feelings when something didn't go his way, but Andrew grew up to be a easygoing person. He had a lot of friends. He was smart, super kind, so funny. He also was an Eagle Scout by the age of 15, and he just had this big smile, and his friends did say that he was short, but that he might have been short, but he definitely was mighty with his personality. He did go over the pond to visit his mom's side. He traveled a lot. He had a lot of friends and a lot of family. Eventually, Andrew went to school at the University of California at Irvine. He got a degree in biological sciences. Andrew would fail to get into medical school, but that did not stop him. He worked harder and he didn't give up. He repeated the application process, and finally, he would be accepted at the Faculty of Medicine of Memorial University of Newfoundland, which is in Canada. Andrew is a Californian boy, born and raised in California. So this is 4,000 miles away from home. He was accepted in 1996, which means he would graduate in 2000. During this time, he had a fiancée. They grew up together. They all had the same friend group. Sadly, they would break up in the summer of 97. By the third year of medical school at Memorial University in Newfoundland, Canada, that's when he met a 38-year-old woman named Shirley. Like I said before, Andrew was engaged once before to his longtime friend and girlfriend, Michelle. But Michelle was actually happy to hear that Andrew was dating again. She moved on, and they remained friends, and she was very close to Andrew's parents, David and Kate. Now, who's Andrew's new girlfriend? Or girl as a friend, they're casually dating. Her name is Shirley Jane Turner. Shirley was born on January 28th, 1961. I don't really want to go over how she grew up because I dislike her so much. But she was smart. She had a rough upbringing. not really well liked among others because she had erotic behaviors, bringing up inappropriate conversations at inappropriate times. She seemed to talk a lot, talk forever, but she was very smart. She actually started college, I believe, at 16. I guess she actually received the nickname The Witch among her, I think, co-workers at one of her places of employment. In 1981, she had her first marriage. They had a son together in 1982 and a daughter in 1985. The couple would divorce in 1988 because she wanted to go off and marry her high school sweetheart. They would have a daughter together in 1990. By September of 91, they were separated, but the divorce would not be finalized for another 6 years. Shirley has definitely had a history with broken relationships. They don't seem to last. By 1999, Shirley would find another boyfriend to have. Leading up to this, she was wanting to become a doctor. Previously, she was a teacher, but she wanted to be a doctor mostly for allegedly the pay and not to help people, which it's like, you should want to be a doctor to help people, not for the paycheck, but the paycheck is also nice. But by 1999, she had a boyfriend, and it was kind of a fatal attraction relationship. She did not handle rejection well when things went wrong, when boyfriends tried to break up with her. This man was 13 years younger than her, and this man ended up having to move 3 different times to get away from Shirley because she just simply could not take no for an answer. Allegedly, she also hit him in the face with her high-heeled shoe. In April of 1999, she was found unconscious on his front doorstep. She wrote 2 suicide notes. Eventually, she was found and she just had to get her stomach pumped. Andrew and Shirley would meet later that year in 1999. She was a resident and Andrew was a clerk on one of his medical school training sessions. So to break it down, a clerkship happens towards the end of medical school, while internship, mostly lasts for months, happens after. Residency is after completing medical school. That's what I've gathered from this information. I should know this. I used to work in hospitals, but I had to look it up. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. So Shirley and Andrew had a casual dating relationship. At one point, Kate asked Andrew, is you and Shirley official? Like, is this your girlfriend? And Andrew said, no. She has 2 failed marriages with 3 kids, and the 3 kids live with their fathers. So she does not have custody of her kids, but she does see them. And she told Andrew apparently that she is not ready for a committed relationship. She just wants, a casual fling and a friend to party with. I'm just gonna put it bluntly. Shirley was batshit crazy. She would call Kate, Andrew's mom, prior to even meeting her, just to talk her ear off. Kate said that, Shirley seems lovely, she seems nice, but it's hard to get her off of the phone. In September of 1999, that's when Andrew introduces Shirley to his mom and dad, to his family, and his friends at a wedding of one of Andrew's friends. Kate and David would see Shirley 2 more times without Andrew. In December of 2000, around Christmas time, Shirley asked David and Kate if she could stay with them because she wanted to take her kids to Disneyland, which is in California. And the Bagbys are like, yeah, of course. They love kids and they're just nice people. So they let Shirley and her children come and stay with them. And they said it was a nice visit. Could not pick up on how crazy this woman was just yet. The second time was in September of 2001. they would get to know more about Shirley's character. Shirley came to stay with the Bagbys with her roommate from college and her husband and their 5-month-old little baby. Now, Kate and David, they love babies. They're all over this little baby. They love it. They said Shirley didn't seem too interested in this baby, but they obviously didn't care. Out of the blue, Shirley was like, I think I want to have another baby. I'd probably be a better mother now. Kate and Shirley's friend were like, whoa, why all of a sudden do you want another baby? You already have 3 kids who you don't have custody of. And she didn't really seem too interested in children, allegedly. So they were just thrown off by that. Yeah, but the child's father has to be a doctor. They brushed it off. Eventually they go out to dinner and Shirley swears up and down that she's going to pay. She's like, it's my treat, you guys. They go out to dinner. Shirley makes a scene because she's joking around with her friend's husband, kind of insults him, and when he kindly corrects her, she freaks out. She's crying in the bathroom. Eventually, Kate comes in and is like trying to calm her down, trying to talk to her. Like, hey, it's okay. Shirley just freaks out. She's like, they're using you as a hotel and saying not so nice things. But Kate was like, well, if they're using me as a hotel, you are too. But they brush it off. They go back to the dinner table. The check comes and Shirley's like, well, I guess you guys expect the doctor to pay for all of this. So David is kind of like, well, you offered to pay for it, but they chip in. Bill gets paid. They go off back home. On September 11th, 2001, that's when 9/11 happens. Terrorist attack in New York City. 2 planes crash into the Twin Towers. And obviously, they're glued to the television screen. Everyone is crying. Just horrible, devastating watching the news. And Shirley comes in, delighted, to tell them she got off the phone and she's got all of her phone equipment set up at her new apartment in Iowa. Thousands of people have been murdered and you care only about yourself, because that's who Shirley was. She was very selfish and self-centered. They would see Shirley once more, this time with Andrew, in October at one of Andrew's friend's wedding in Pittsburgh. I believe it was Pittsburgh. But they said nothing out of the ordinary was happening. And Andrew didn't really talk to them about his relationship with Shirley. Andrew would talk to his family, to his parents every week. But Andrew's life was going in a new direction. He finished medical school and now he's on this journey of finding what career he wants to pursue in the medical field. Andrew and Shirley tried to do the long distance relationship when he got the opportunity to be a surgical resident in Syracuse, New York. She worked at a hospital in Iowa. Being a surgeon was just not for him, and he decided to pursue working at a family practice. He loved it. He thrived there. He made new friends. He took care of new patients that meant a lot to him, and he helped a lot of people there. He actually lived across the street from the hospital, so it was literally a 30-second walk. He was kind of in a relationship with someone who was not great. She called him constantly. At one point, called his ex-fiance. She would call his friends. She would leave out-of-touch voicemails. One time, Andrew was at a wedding she wasn't invited to. She called literally over 20 times, and finally, he picks up the phone, and he's pissed off. He's like, leave me alone. In late October, Shirley would come visit Andrew to stay there at his place for about a week. During this time, Andrew discovers that Shirley faked a pregnancy to keep him in the relationship. And he didn't like that. So when he took her to the airport, he sat her down and he broke it off with her. He just couldn't deal with her anymore. She was getting out of hand. And Andrew was a nice guy, pretty laid back, very easygoing. He had a bright future ahead of him. And Shirley was just not the person for him. So he sent her on a plane, and this was on November 3rd. Early in the morning on November 5th, 5:30 in the morning, he gets a knock at the door, and it's Shirley. She drove 16 hours to surprise Andrew, like, hey, what's up? Andrew would tell one of his friends and colleague, Dr. Clark, like, guess who showed up at my door this morning? And Clark knew about the history with Shirley and Andrew kind of, it seemed like he wasn't making a big deal out of this. His friend was like, oh, hell no, like this crazy behavior that she's showing. Andrew said after work, he's going to talk to Shirley, end it for good, send her off again. Dr. Clark said, please, let's meet up afterwards, have some beers, we'll talk about it. And Andrew's like, okay. Andrew left, he bought some beers. He told his friend that he was meeting Shirley at the bar, but he actually drove 20 minutes away to Keystone Park. And that's where Andrew would be murdered. On November 6th, Shirley would call Kate, David's mother, while Kate was at work. She was a nurse practitioner. She was very busy, but she took time out of her schedule to talk to Shirley. She received the first phone call at 8:40 in the morning, and this was not the only phone call she received from Shirley. And Shirley seemed, Kate knows now, like Shirley was just being weird. She kept asking, have you heard from Andrew? And Kate kept telling her, like, no, I haven't heard from him. And Kate's like, oh, the last time I saw him, we were fine. And then during one of the phone calls, she said that the police in Pennsylvania called her work, Shirley's work, to know about her whereabouts the day prior. But Shirley's like, I was home all day. I had a migraine, but I'm better now. Then she asked Kate if she would please page Andrew while he is at work. Shirley wasn't able to do this because she had some issues with people at Andrew's work. She left a horrible voicemail there, so she wasn't really welcomed to contact anybody there. Kate reassured her that, hey, maybe you lost your credit card there and the police are just trying to contact you with information regarding that. But by 2:30, Kate would receive the worst phone call a parent could receive. She went through some hoops, a few phone calls, but eventually she was told that her son, her only child, was murdered under suspicious circumstances. David and Kate book it. They literally get on a plane, drop everything to go find out what happened. And they have that little hope that maybe it's not Andrew. But sadly, it was Andrew. He was shot 5 times. His murder was obviously a crime of passion. There was 5 gunshot wounds total, 2 to the rectum. He even had an injury on his head, which indicated that maybe his murderer kicked him in the head after they shot him. Police asked, do you know anybody that would want to hurt your son? And they didn't know. The first suspect would obviously be Shirley. She's the love interest and she would have a motive. Also, Clark was like, hey, she came back. Andrew said he was going to go meet with her after a bad breakup. So investigators, they're going to look into Shirley. So the first interview with Shirley is over the phone because by then, she's back in Iowa now. They asked her where she's been, what she's been up to. On October 26th, she stayed with Andrew for a week. On Saturday, November 3rd, he put her on a plane to go back to Iowa. She said they were fine. That weekend, she went to the zoo. She went to the movies all by herself. She even got some dinner, Kentucky Fried Chicken. That Monday, she had a migraine, so she stayed home. She clarifies that she unplugged her home phone, and she told everybody that if you need me, you can reach me on my cell phone. And Tuesday, she was at work by 11:30. They asked her if she had any guns, and she said, yes, I do. I have a small handgun pistol. She agreed to turn in the gun to the local police to have a ballistic examination done. 5 hours later, she called back to say the gun was missing. During this second phone call, she actually gets a knock at the door. It's the local police. They're going to talk to her face to face about Andrew's murder. She went over the relationship. She went over her timeline, which does not match anybody else's. It would be discovered that she bought this handgun on October 16th, and she actually had some lessons done about how to work it and shoot it. They asked her, why would you need a gun? And she said, for protection. Her friends wanted her to get one because, you know, she's a single lady and single living lady at a state she's not from, and she just needed some protection. Her friends told her to get a German Shepherd also, but she said she didn't like dogs. Normally, I'd let it slide because not everybody has to like dogs, whatever. But because it's her, obviously it's a no-brainer about who murdered Andrew. The motive was obviously not robbery. He was not robbed. He had no enemies. The weapon matched a handgun Shirley owned. Witnesses saw her RAV4 parked next to Andrew's car on the day of the murder, and she logged on to her eBay and Hotmail from Andrew's home computer after the murder. She changed her story a lot. She had a motive. She couldn't handle Andrew's rejection. Now, this was 2001. Cell phone towers, it took a long time to receive data back. And it took weeks to receive Shirley's data back. You know the saying, if there's a ring, there's a ding. And her phone was dinging off towers from Iowa to where Andrew lived. And all the way back. So, with all this evidence, there would be an issue out for her arrest. This is where things get tricky. Shirley went back to Canada. She was born in America, but she spent most of her life in Canada. Her mom was from Canada. She went back to Canada. I believe she was advised by her lawyers to go back to Canada. That's what they say. You know, she had family there, but it seems like to a lot of people she fled, she left. Where the huge frustration comes in because now she's not in the United States anymore. They're going to have to go through a lot of legal battles to get her extradited back to the US. She would be arrested in Canada for Andrew's murder. You would think that the country would be like, go, bye-bye, but that's not how it works. She would sadly be released on bond. They said she was not a threat to the public because the crime was of her partner, that the judge felt like she wouldn't have the need to harm the public. Her total was $75,000 in sureties. Two of her friends paid $5,000. $65,000 was from a prior psychiatrist she saw. I'm probably saying it wrong. Sureties, that is, they don't pay up front. So they sign their name, and if she breaks the rules out on bond, then they would have to pay. So if she's a good girl, then they don't have to pay anything. She shouldn't even be out on bond. She should be back in the US behind bars or being seen in front of a jury. This is when rumors through the grapevine start to spread. Shirley is saying she is pregnant and Andrew is the father. Kate and David hear of this news and they are a little bit confused. They end up leaving California to go live in Canada to fight for their only son's child. And this child's mother murdered their son. So Kate and David's biggest battle, which they shouldn't even had to fight for, was for custody of their only grandchild. It is believed that Shirley did not know she was pregnant at the time of the murder. A lot of people believe that she would not carry out the murder if she knew she was pregnant. The time of conception lines up with when Shirley stayed that last week in October to early November when Andrew was breaking up with her. It seems like they had a little, breakup session, and that's when a little baby was made. The U.S. had a lot of evidence proving Shirley was Andrew's murder. Kate and David were told multiple times that the law is slow, so this is going to be a long process to get Shirley back into the United States. That way she can be tried for Andrew's murder. Canada abolished capital punishment in 1976, and they want to make sure, before they extradite someone to the US, that the accused would not face the death penalty. Shirley's case had a bunch of delays. A lot of delays, pushback because of the legal interpretation of language. There's two versions of the Canadian Extradition Act, one in English and one in French. What David and Kate went through, truly, I don't know how they did it. They would have to see Shirley in court with a growing bump. They would need a DNA test to prove that it was Andrew's baby. Shirley was tough. She did not want them involved, but eventually, when time was moving along and it got closer to her possibly going to jail, that's when she was okay with the Bagbys. Now, Shirley would give birth to a beautiful baby boy. She named him Zachary Andrew Turner. Oh boy, they did not need to do a DNA test because he looked just like his dad. He looked just like Andrew. And Kate and David just obviously fell in love. It was tough. They weren't able to see him when he was born because Shirley would not let them, but eventually they were able to have scheduled visits with him with a professional watching them. They had to get patted down to make sure that they didn't have any weapons because Shirley was in fear of them. The Bagbys would do anything to see little Zachary, and they provided everything he needed: diapers, a crib, clothes. They gave Shirley everything she needed for that little baby boy who was so precious. And every visit was just so special. They would take pictures. They would do tummy time with him. It was hard for them to give little baby Zachary back to his mother, the same woman that murdered his father. But Shirley turned around when she had to go back to jail. She allowed David and Kate to have custody of baby Zachary, but it came with ties. They would have to travel 2 hours away once a week for baby Zachary to see his mom in jail. They would have to have phone calls with Shirley. They talked a lot, and Shirley just has the audacity. Let me tell you, she has the audacity. She would ask Kate to put pictures of Shirley and Andrew up in the house for Zachary. And Kate was like, I'm not really ready yet. The patience Kate and David had with this lady. In the documentary, you can hear phone calls that they had that was recorded. And David and Kate, calm as a cucumber. And Shirley, she's just testing the waters. So Shirley was arrested in November of 2002. She had baby Zachary in July, just a few months prior to her arrest. So Zachary is just a few months old, and he was, I'm sure he had the best life with David and Kate. There's a cute picture of them at Christmas time, but sadly, Shirley would be released on bond yet again. The legal system failed the Bagbys, and it failed baby Zachary. By January of 2003, Zachary had to go back to his mom. Now, the reasoning for this, the judge said Shirley's detention is not necessarily in the public's interest, that there is no indication of a psychological disorder that should concern the public. For months, Kate and David had to deal with Shirley face to face. They were able to spend time with baby Zachary, take him to the park, take him to the mall, have more visits with him. That wasn't just an hour in a room. They went through the options of, should we run away with him? They wanted to physically, hurt Shirley, but They just wanted what was best for Zachary. They wanted to have the law do its thing. That way, they're able to get custody of Zachary. Apparently, legally, Shirley had every right to be a mother to Zachary. By June 10th, 2003, the Attorney General's ordered Canada to surrender Shirley to the United States. Her lawyers would try to appeal, but the trial date was set for September 25th, 2003. Shirley would never make it to that court date. In August of 2003, little Zachary was only 1 year old when his mother murdered him. He was drugged with lorazepam in his baby bottle. His mother tied him to her chest with a sweater, and she jumped into the Atlantic Ocean, where they both passed away. They would be washed ashore and their bodies would be discovered. Why would Shirley do this? While she was out on bail, and when David and Kate were taking care of Zachary for overnight visits, Shirley met a man at a bar. But the guy found out about Shirley and how she's a prime suspect in her ex-boyfriend's murder. So he's trying to, bye-bye, lady. Again, she can't handle rejection well. She's harassing him. He had to call the police 3 times to report her behavior, and they just asked, do you want to press charges? And he did not. Sadly, if he were to have pressed charges, Shirley would have been behind bars quickly because she did not follow the rules of being on bail. She called this man over 200 times, and she also tried to do the fake pregnancy card. The day she murdered her son, she took Polaroid pictures of her and him in her car. There was a used tampon in these photos, and police believe that she took these photos to frame her ex-boyfriend that didn't want anything to do with her, because her car was parked outside of his house when she took those pictures, and she left. She walked away from her car and jumped into the Atlantic Ocean with her little baby. Kurt, he made this documentary for Zach, and when Zach passed away, he wanted to give up, but he kept going for Kate and David to leave this for them. That way they can see memories of baby Zachary. Seeing Kate and David break down in this documentary was the hardest thing I've ever seen. Not only did they have to see their son deceased and to touch him and to say goodbye, and they know he's not coming back and that he was murdered, and then to have to do that again with their only grandson. Both Andrew and Zachary would be cremated. Their ashes would be scattered at the same place. David and Kate would say that the only thing that they can do was to hopefully prevent this from happening to another family. And they fought. They went to lawmakers. In December of 2010, Bill C-464, also known as Zachary Bill, had passed. It allows the court to refuse bail to anyone accused of serious crime who might be a danger to their child. 2 scholarships as a tribute to Andrew and Zachary would be created. In May of 2006, the psychiatrist that signed the line to post bail was found guilty of professional misconduct involvement in Shirley's bail in May of 2006. I believe David and Kate are still alive. I read David's book, Dancing with the Devil, about Andrew and Zachary. I highly recommend you read that book. I highly recommend you watch the documentary. It's truly heartbreaking that these professionals knew what she was capable of, and they let her have her baby. Andrew would be in his 50s and Zachary would be in his 20s. But that is going to be it from me today. Let me know if you guys have watched this documentary. I can't even say it right. I'm so devastated. As always, please, please, please be safe out there. And as always, stay golden.